It is interesting how nowadays everyone has a side hustle, and for those who don't have, they are really fast tracking having a side hustle. But the truth is that side hustles don't fix financial problems. Regardless you are in which city out there, you see, for example, the full-time employed staff or people who are working full-time jobs. After work or even during the weekends, they are out there, for example, doing ride-hailing services, basically doing Uber, Bolt, you name it. They're out there doing delivery business, okay? They're out there trying to get consultancy gigs on the side. Even some are even selling food on their spare time. But the big question is, do these efforts really address financial problems? I don't really think so, because most people with side hustles still feel stuck. In this video, we are going to examine why this is the case, and instead also share what people should be doing for them to be able to fix financial problems, because side hustles are not the solution to financial problems. You are all much welcome to my channel. My name is Afagza Sifunam. In case you are new here, consider subscribing, and also while you are at it, drop a like on this video. As a starting point, let's really examine why people start side hustles. The truth is that most people out there can even argue it is their hobby and other things. But the truth is that people start side hustles because they feel like they need to complement their income. Basically said, they feel like they need more income. So they go out there to spend additional time beyond work, the weekends, to pursue other gigs for them to be able to complement their main income, because they feel like one salary or one source of income is not enough for them. And when you look at it very well, this is driven by increase in fixed costs. I'm talking about the price of food going up. I'm talking about the cost of items increasing. I'm talking about rent prices increasing. All these are driving people to have side hustles. And to look at this practically, even assuming you are earning 80,000 Kenya shillings in Nairobi City, which of course the average income is lower than that. Even that 80K is not sufficient, and I'm assuming net income, okay? Because you having a rent of 30K, okay? Think about food 15K. Think about your transport 8K. In case you have school fees obligations are there. In case you have other obligations, maybe like supporting family members are there. This money is very little, because even that 80K, all of it is gone before you think about anything else. And that is why you find that most adults have pressure to start a side hustle for them to be able to make additional income. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I support the idea of side hustles. The only thing I'm saying is that most people start side hustles blindly, because the reality is that they don't really fix the system behind their financial problems. They start a side hustle for them to be able to potentially increase their income. But the catch is that even through these side hustles, when they increase their income, typically their money behavior is also going to compound. And I'm saying so because if there are any negative money behaviors, they need to be addressed directly. They can't be masked with something else. Case in point, if you are earning 80K, you start a side hustle, maybe you make 40K extra per month. Chances are your cost of living is going to increase. Basically put, your fixed costs are going to increase. Even some people are going to move to different houses, okay? Their cost of transport is going to change. Maybe they'll stop using matatus and even look for a car on loan. All these, people might see them as development. But then again, is it actually expounding the underlying financial gaps they have when it comes to treating money and handling money, or is the side hustle fixing this? For most people out there, regardless of how much they are earning, the real problem which needs to be fixed is fixed costs. Fixed cost is the main issue. And I'm saying so because when you look at data, in whichever country out there, most people spend the majority of their earned cash on fixed costs. In Kenya, even the average is insane, because most Kenyans spend upwards of 70% on their fixed costs each and every month. Basically put, the cost of rent, food, okay, clothing, maybe your education, transport, all these things typically cost more than 70% of people's salary, regardless of how much people earn. That is how interesting it is. A person earning 70K, a person earning 200K, earning $500,000, all these people typically spend almost 70% plus of their income on fixed costs. And that is why here we have the biggest opportunity to fix. The biggest opportunity is not in you, for example, starting a side hustle so that you can be able to make 10% of what your salary pays you, or even 20%. The biggest opportunity is addressing the fixed costs head on. Because if you address these fixed costs, then you're gonna start feeling much less financial pressure. And I'm saying so because in Kenya, the fixed cost bad behavior or the fixed cost mess typically manifests in given ways. Case in point, you being employed and paying expensive rent just to fit in a given class because you feel like you need to pay a given amount of rent or live in a given part of the city, and yet you are straining to pay that particular rent. Case in point, jumping on car financing, and yet you are really straining to even be able to keep up with the monthly payment which you entered into while getting that car on hire purchase. Case in point, daily use of Uber or Bolt or whichever ride-hailing service instead of Matatu. If you are working 23 days in a month and each and every day you are spending upwards of 1,000 shillings on ride-hailing services, that tells you upwards of 23k Kenya shilling is gone. Basically, we are talking even upwards of 30k Kenya shillings is gone. And yet, you could actually spend less than 5k using Matatu. So why is the pressure? That looks like a bad money habit which could be fixed in a different way compared to jumping on a side hustle. Another bad financial behavior could look like constantly eating out, more so eating in those classy or posh restaurants for you to belong in a given class. And yet, your budget for food and groceries in a month don't allow for you to do that. And then the last bad money behavior could look like you getting into debts and remaining in that cycle of debts, consuming a huge chunk of your income because of interest rates. And unfortunately, if you fail to pay, those debts run away. Guys, these bad money behaviors don't really need a side hustle for you to be able to address them. The biggest opportunity is outrightly addressing the fixed cost, as I've mentioned. If, for example, you like using Uber and yet your earning doesn't allow, be humble enough to use Matatu. If, for example, you have the habit of changing houses to go to expensive houses, if, for example, you are earning 80k and your rent is 40 or 50k, that is a bad calculation. Get a house of 15k or even lower and then see how your life is gonna change, how you're gonna have less financial pressure. Those are just examples of bad financial behaviors which need to be fixed head on, and you don't need a side hustle for you to be able to fix them. And by the way, an interesting misconception is that most people assume side hustles are free. Guys, every side hustle costs you. It just varies. What does it cost you? Case in point, it costs you skills, okay? It costs you big time when it comes to time. It costs you mental peace. It costs you social connections and networks. So, you're sitting there assuming, for example, a side hustle is a free gig. Unfortunately, it isn't. And it's very funny, for example, seeing people out there assuming they can start a side hustle, which is a passive income, and then succeed immediately. The truth is that even passive incomes are started actively before they become passive. And that is why you need to think about adjustments you can make if your main pain point is financial pressure. Think about how you can address the fixed costs for you to be able to ease the financial pressure as opposed to jumping to a side hustle. And yet, the real problem is bad financial habits. Whichever side hustle you jump into is gonna cost you something. Most of the time, think about the time you take away from your friends, your family, yourself, for you to be able to work in the evenings, to work over the weekends, just to make maybe 10% of what you are earning, and yet your fixed costs are consuming upwards of 70%. That is not the most strategic of maths, because you could ease financial pressure through a better approach of you addressing fixed costs. And then, in addition to to you addressing the fixed costs, additional things you need to do is you need to build a money system. Most people out there fail and don't become wealthy because of gap in money system. Basically put, you need to have a clear system of how your checking amount is spent. For example, you can dedicate a given percentage, and I've said please reduce it. If your fixed costs are 70%, even reduce to 50% of your income, okay? Dedicate that to your spending account. Think about having a saving account because it is very important most when it comes to emergencies. And also, think about appropriating your money to investments, okay? Basically have these 3 accounts: spend account, savings account, and investment account. Try that even just for 1 year, and you're gonna see how your life is gonna change. And talking about investments, the third thing you need to do is also start investments. Don't just sit there and saying, I'm gonna wait for the right time to invest. Start investing today and see the power of compounding work for you over time. Don't sit there and say, I'm earning little amount of money. Even if you are earning 50K, and look, even if it's 2K, 3K, 5K each and every month, and put that in investments. And look, I give you another amount of money, put that in savings as you continue dealing with your fixed costs. Balancing this is gonna assist you ease financial pressure as opposed to just outwardly jumping on a side hustle, and yet the fundamentals around dealing with fixed costs, having savings, and also you starting to invest, you haven't addressed those. Guys, what do you think about this video? Do you think side hustles address financial problems? Or do you think for most people out there, they are using side hustles to mask financial problems?